Hey, all you Gretas and Cheetahs cats out there. Welcome to Chapter 6, Section 2. What are the major types of terrestrial ecosystems? You have all done this before in freshman year when you learned about biomes. So we're going to look at those quickly, but then mainly focus on human impact to these different ecosystems. So biome and ecosystem formation is driven by the long-term differences in precipitation and temperature. We talked about that in the first section. So because of how the sun hits the planet, the air and the water flow in different ways and bring water to and from different areas, which gives us all of the different temperatures and the ecosystems and biomes that we have. Human activities do interfere with these ecosystem and Human activities interfere with both ecosystem and economic services provided by these biomes. So ecosystem services are things that nature does for us for free, like pollination. And then economic services are things that we get from nature that we can actually spend money on. So both of these things get messed up because humans are stupid and things are dying. So let's start. Formation of specific ecosystems is due to a couple things. Differences in average annual precipitation, so how much rain you get or snow, and the temperature, and then air circulation patterns and ocean currents. So climate and vegetation vary in both latitude and elevation, and they give rise to different biomes. So the edge effect, when you are right between two different ecosystems or biomes, they're going to have greater diversity because they have a little bit of both. But mainly, your ecosystems or your biomes are going to be different in the temperature, in the rainfall, and the plants and the animals. They're all going to be unique to different biomes. So you have your cold biomes, you have your hot biomes, you have your wet biomes, you have your dry biomes. So you have the tundra and the deserts of the different cold, temperate, and tropical or dry. Then you have your forests over here in the wet area. Hot stuff, cold stuff. So here are the biomes spaced out. And if you went back and compared this to the air and the water currents, you'd see some similarities with how the air and the water move the moisture and the dryness and the temperatures around. So deserts, the annual precipitation is really low and it's fairly uneven. They might get all of their rain in like 2 days. It's classified, you can have tropical, temperate, or cold. They're fairly fragile because they are so dry. There's not a ton of plants, so there's a lot of soil erosion. The plants grow very slow because they don't know when their next water is coming. Very low species diversity, so not as stable as some of the other ones. Very slow nutrient cycling, just because, once again, there's less plant growth, so there's less everything. And there's fairly little water, so not much to kind of get it going. We have our tropical desert, our temperate, and our cold desert. These are climatographs that are going to just show both the temperature and the rainfall. And then we're moving on to grasslands. So grasslands are dominated by grass species, mainly located in the interior of continents. And they form in areas that are too wet for deserts, but are too wet to be a desert, but they're too not wet enough to be a forest. So you can have tropical, temperate, and cold grasslands as well. So you have your tropical grassland, that's like your savanna. Temperate grassland would be around here, and then the cold grassland would be more north. Forests dominated by trees. Who would have thunk? 3 major types of forests. You have your tropical, like your rainforest near Ecuador, temperate, which is near us, deciduous and coastal coniferous forests, and then you have your cold boreal forest, the northern coniferous forest in the higher latitudes. So once again, all of these things, you're going to have a hot version, a cold version, and a medium version. It's like Goldilocks and the 3 bears, both biomes. So here's your tropical forest with lots of water, your temperate forest, and your cold forest. But you notice all the forests have more water to them because you need to support all that plant life than some of the other biomes do. Now, mountains do play an important ecological role, and I touched on mountains last time too when talking about the rain shadow effect. About a fourth of Earth's land surface is mountainous, which is pretty crazy considering we live in the very flat state of Indiana. Much of the world's population depends on mountains for fresh water. So it snows up at the top of the mountains, that snow melts, and then it comes down the mountain in rivers and streams and gets to the people. Mountains can be islands of biodiversity. Often the top part of the mountain has things on it that you wouldn't have elsewhere. Storehouses of water in the hydrologic cycle. So all that snow, all that glacier. Oh, good. Sorry. All that snow and glacier melt early in the spring and summer is going to go down. But it's melting earlier and earlier in the spring due to atmospheric warming, and many glaciers may disappear this century, which is really, really bad because all those places that depend on that water to not die are no longer going to have that water. So bad news. Humans have disturbed much of Earth's land. Who would have known? So unsustainable agriculture is one of the greatest threats to this planet. Industrialized agriculture is awful for the planet. It is not a sustainable method at all. Very, very bad. And we'll talk about that multiple times this year. About 60% of terrestrial ecosystems are either being degraded, so lower quality, or being used unsustainably. So we can't keep going with whatever we're doing. So the question is, how long can we degrade these terrestrial forms of natural capital without permanently altering the ecosystems and the world's economies? We don't know, but I would say within like 10 years, we're in trouble. So human impacts on terrestrial ecosystems. So in deserts, sometimes we make cities. We destroy the soil and underground habitat by having off-road vehicles, which looks really fun, but totally destroys the ecosystem. We deplete the groundwater because they don't have a lot, and then we use it up in these cities. And then we can also disturb the land and cause pollution from mineral extracting, mining. Grasslands, we can convert to croplands. We do that here in Indiana. And once again, industrialized agriculture, awful for the environment. We often release carbon dioxide to the atmosphere when we're burning the grassland. We can have overgrazing by livestock, and then in places like the Arctic tundra, we have oil production and off-road vehicles, both of which are bad. Forests we can clear for agriculture, livestock grazing, timber, and urban development. And sometimes we just chop it down, but sometimes we burn it, and both of those are really bad. Because one, we don't have trees, and then if they're burning them, that's putting even extra CO2 into the air. We convert diverse forest of a bunch of different kinds of things into tree plantations, so you only have one or two types of trees. And we've already talked about why and how biodiversity is so important to the stability of an ecosystem. So we're just destroying that. Once again, damage from off-road vehicles and pollution of those forest streams. Mountains. We can have farms on the mountains. It doesn't last very long because the soil isn't the great, so we just keep destroying more. We can have hydroelectric dams and reservoirs. We can have air pollution blowing in from urban areas and power plants. And then once again, soil damage from off-road vehicles. So if you notice, all of these areas, off-road vehicles are not good for the ecosystem. Yeah, they look super fun, but you're messing up stuff. All right, and we have survived round 2 of notes. So before I go, I want to let each and every one of you know that you are good enough, you are smart enough, and people do like you. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good God, do your homework.